Okay, so I want to tell you a little bit about the Elderberries. First of all, I want to credit the name to my husband, Adrian George. He came up with that name, and I loved it because I think it honors us as elders, but also shows that, you know, we don't take ourselves too seriously. So we are a social group of UU seniors, people over 60. There are 57 of us on our mailing list right now, and we range in age from 60 to over 80. In terms of membership, we've been people who've been members for less than a year to well over 40 years. If you can think of something that's been done in the church, one of our members has done it. We've been choir members, youth mentors, youth group leaders, grounds cleanup, community dinners, soup kitchen casserole makers. We've been in the Social Justice Committee, the Black Lives Matter Committee, Religious Education, Social Activities, Public Relations, Leadership Development, Worship Associates, Invested Funds Management, Covenant Group Leader, Pastoral Team Member, Simple Gifts Coffee House Leaders and Workers. I think I missed one. Thank you. Membership Development. Pledge Drive Workers. I knew I would forget something. Stewardship Committee, Technical Support, Summer Service Leaders, Organized Cemetery Tours. One of our members produced a UU video, UU Church of Nashua Historic Reflections. One member arranged a duffel bag project for kids in foster care, a bike project for kids in foster care, and we've helped Ben set up the labyrinth. Our members have been board members, the vice president, the treasurer, and the clerk. So if you can think of anything that's been done in the church, members of this group have probably participated in it. So what do? We go out to eat a lot. We've also gone on hikes. We've had some picnics in Greeley Park. We went to Fuller Gardens and had a beautiful tour there. I didn't ask Carol's permission to do this, but we also toured gardens in Nashua, and these pictures are from Carol Hode's garden, which is absolutely stunning. So we did that. We went apple picking. We went bowling. We had a really great program presented to us at the Manchester Millyard Museum. It was really good. We went to a wine tasting at Wine Knot that was a fundraiser for Ukraine. We've been to the Courier several times. We got to see artwork by one of our members, Loretta Hubley, at the Riviere Art Gallery. We also got to see artwork by another of our members, Ellen Fisher, who had an exhibit at the Nashua Library. And most recently, we heard a fantastic concert by the New Hampshire Symphony Jazz Quartet. So we are really grateful that we have the time and the opportunity to, you know, develop these friendships and build this feeling of community. We know how important it is, we really treasure it, and we wish this opportunity for people of every age.
I'm still Elizabeth Lewis, and I started coming to this church in 1979. I was born in the first half of the last century, and I know some things. I know the concepts of time and of age are sometimes fuzzy. For example, as a college student in the 60s, I knew the mantra, never trust anyone over 40, or was it 50? I now know that was crazy talk. Those people have lots of experience and much to offer. In 1967, 2020 seemed so far away, and now 2019, 2020 seems so long ago, pre the pandemic. When we are young, we learn from people older than ourselves. As we age, we start to learn from younger people and are glad they know so much. By the time we reach 65 or maybe 70, our doctors, our ministers, our church leaders are all younger than we are, and that is good. My first experience embracing aging happened here in the sanctuary. A few days shy of my 40-something birthday, a birthday I was not very excited about. Ann B. shared her joy that her grandmother was celebrating her 103rd birthday on January 17th. Oh, that's my birthday. The same day. Her grandmother lived on her own, was still driving, and planned a big party with lots of friends. Talk about an attitude adjustment. It so happens that my college roommate is one day younger than I am. And during college, we would have joint birthday celebrations. I reached out to her that very day, and we began to plan a long weekend to celebrate our joint 50th birthday, still a few years away. We invited several of our college friends, and most of them joined us. We repeated the invitation when we turned 60, then again at 70. One of the neat things was that the original group grew in numbers as our group of friends began to include women we had befriended at our college reunions from the 20th reunion on. Our 55th college reunion is in 2 years, so maybe there will be new women who join us for our subsequent celebration of turning 80. I know that it is a wonderful experience to celebrate aging, and even better to do it with good friends. Something else I know is that you're not limited to just one profession or career. I've had many job titles: Liz, breakfast waitress number 9, Elizabeth, data analyst, Megan's mom, Megan and Joan's mom, Mrs. Lewis, instructor of accounting, Elizabeth Lewis, interim director of affirmative action, and Elizabeth RN, CHPN, to name a few. Each of these jobs required new skill sets and required me to step out of my comfort zone. All were made better by building connections and community with my coworkers and support staff. I know to never work for a jerk, to look for the humor every day, and to thank the people who make your job easier by showing up and working alongside you. Some of you here this morning may not yet be 30, or you're approaching 40, or maybe 50. I want to offer you the poem Warning by Jenny Joseph, a British poet who wrote this when she was 29. When I am an old woman, I shall wear purple with a red hat that doesn't go and doesn't suit me. And I shall spend my pension on brandy and summer gloves and satin sandals, and say we've no money for butter. I shall sit down on the pavement when I'm tired and gobble up samples in shops and press alarm bells and run my stick along the public railings and make up for the sobriety of my youth. I shall go out in my slippers in the rain and pick the flowers in other people's gardens and learn to spit. You can wear terrible shirts and grow more fat. And eat 3 pounds of sausages at a go, or only bread and pickles for a week, and hoard pens and pencils and beer mats and things in boxes. But now we must have clothes that keep us dry and pay our rent and not swear in the street, and set a good example for the children. We will have friends to dinner and read the papers, but maybe I ought to practice a little now, so people who know me are not too shocked and surprised when suddenly I am old and start to wear purple. I know it is important to do the fun stuff now. Don't wait to be old, because after all, what is old?
So the author, Martha Beck, said, I feel about aging the way William Sarowin said he felt about death. Everybody has to do it, but I always assumed an exception would be made in my case. And I think in some way, we all would like to be the exception to the rule of aging, right? But it's a bit of a paradox. Nobody wants to die young, but then nobody really wants to get old. And I think if we think back on the words of the songs we heard today, when I'm 64, when you're 20 or you're 30, you just can't get your head around being 64. It's just hard to imagine. And then when you do get older, how terribly strange to be 70, as we heard. So today I want to reflect a little bit about how our culture thinks about aging and offer some reflections on how we might actually embrace aging. So in general, if you really think about it, our culture looks at getting old as a negative, right? In our culture, it's a bit of a disaster. Old people are seen as incompetent, out of touch, set in their ways, or my least favorite, cute. And we can see and people can talk about aging as a series of losses, right? The loss of our physical power, the loss of our earning potential, the loss of our relevance, and eventually the loss of our friends and our families. And if we think about aging only that way, as a series of losses, then it's natural that we would fear it, that when we're younger we would fear it, and that when we're older we would deny it. And I particularly, I'm into communications, I'm into language, and I particularly notice this in our language, that sometimes, people will refer to somebody my age and say, she's 67 years young. And I think, wow, it's like a bad word. Like we can't even say the word old. That it's seen as such a negative, and so it's completely fine with me. You can call me an old woman, and you can say that I'm 67 years old. I'm totally good with that. So, we also see images, and we hear stories about 80-year-olds that start nonprofits, and 90-year-olds who tap dance, and 100-year-olds who run a marathon. And I think those things are great, and I'm really, really happy, truly happy for those people. But I get worried sometimes that gets distorted to a should. And it also gets distorted to, if you try hard enough, you don't really have to age. And again, I think that's kind of belies our fear and our negativity that we hold about aging. But there is another way. There are cultures that value old people and refer to them as elders. And it is true in many cultures, and it happens to also be true in Japanese culture. And so I want to tell you a story from the Japanese culture that illustrates their reverence and appreciation for older people. So there was a woman who went to the well every day, and she did so. She had a pole on her arms across her shoulders, and she had a bucket on either side. And every day she went down to the well, she filled both her buckets, and every day she walked back home with those buckets on either side of the pole. And she would do that every day. And one day when she was back at home, when she noticed that, she had a young bucket. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. She had a young bucket and an older bucket, a new bucket and an old bucket. And the old bucket leaked. And so when she would get back home, she would see that there was only half the water left in the old bucket. And then the old bucket noticed this, that it lost half its water along the way. And the old bucket felt bad. And the old bucket apologized to the woman and said, "I'm so sorry. The young bucket carries all the water, and I drop half mine." And she said, "Oh no, oh no. Look at the path behind you. Look at all the flowers growing on your side." Okay? So, there are joys and there are benefits to being older. And, in Korea also, you get a great big party when you turn 60 because it's such a wonderful milestone, and an even bigger one when you turn 70. because you're so valued and respected. So if we think of life as a journey, maybe elderdom is a stop on that journey to be cherished and explored. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about that. As I said, I'm 67, so I'm not that far on my journey to elderdom. But I'd like to share with you a few things that I think I have learned. That's one of the things we hope, right? Is that we get older, we learn a few things, we hope. So I think on any journey, we need a travel plan. We need to know what to look for, what to focus on, what to ignore, and we need good traveling companions. So I think on this journey, this life's journey, a travel plan would be our philosophy or our spirituality, and I think that's why we're all here, to find that and to develop that. Because we all know at all life stages that we're all going to face challenges, that life is not easy. And our jobs and our degrees and the things that we own won't help us through those times. But a sense of where we fit in the universe and our values and our friends are the things that will carry us through. So I think we need that, and I think any philosophy worth its salt will be one that will teach us to love ourselves and to see the divine in everyone. And we shouldn't wander aimlessly. We should have a purpose and know where we're going. So I've found in my life that the things that were the hardest for me were the things that were purposeful, and they were the things that gave my life meaning. So raising my daughter, nursing my mother through her death, organizing a union and negotiating a contract, those were really hard things. But those were the things that I'm the proudest of, and those are the things that gave my life meaning. And I think it's important to note that I didn't get paid to do any of those things. I didn't make any money. I didn't get any social status. I didn't get any recognition, and I didn't need any. I think we want to know what to ignore. Our culture puts so much focus on looks, and as we age, the cosmetic counters are filled with anti-aging products. I want to see a pro-aging product. I want to like highlight these laugh lines, you know. But anyway, I think as you get older, you develop a sense of perspective and you start to care less about that, and it reminds me of this saying that I saw on Facebook, of course. You don't become cooler with age, but you do care progressively less about being cool, which is the only true way to actually be cool. This is known as the geezer's paradox. And we also care less what people think about us, and I love this particular quote. I've said it many times. In our 20s, we care so much what other people think about us. And in our 40s, we begin to care less what other people think about us. In our 60s, we realize nobody was ever thinking about us anyway. Okay, and so I also want to share some things that I learned from someone older than me, my mom, particularly when my mom was preparing for the end of her life. She had cancer, and she knew that it was the end of her life, and I took care of her for 6 months. So the first thing that I learned at that time was the natural world is a beautiful place, and we frequently take it for granted. And I observed as my mother was getting ready to leave this world how much she savored a beautiful piece of music, or a meal, or the wind on her face, or the sun, or anything like that. And it made me realize that, you know, we often take that for granted, and, and we shouldn't. The other thing that I saw that was important to her was her connection to people that she loved. And, you know, we all need to get dinner on the table, right? We all need to go to our jobs. We all need to pick up the groceries. We need to do those things. But we should not neglect the essence of our life while we're busy living. And finally, we need good traveling companions, including ourselves. And I think the qualities that will ensure this are compassion and kindness and tolerance. And this is not easy, right? Because people have this annoying habit of disagreeing with us. And they don't always see the world as we do. But if we can keep working towards compassion and tolerance, which is which is not a short order, our journey will be that much more enjoyable. I couldn't imagine my journey without my husband and my daughter and my friends and all you here. That's why we're here, right? We're here with community. We're here to find our tribe, to help each other through that journey. So I invite you to value whatever stage of life you're in and to not fear the next stage. And I want to leave you with this quote from Becky Helmsley. No one tells the oceans or the trees or the mountains that they're too old. They talk of how powerful, how grounded, how awesome they are. Imagine if we thought about ourselves this way as we aged. Maybe we would realize how spectacular we are.